Think about the last time a coworker or classmate walked by, right? And they casually asked how you were doing.
Yeah, a super common scenario.
Right, happens all the time.
Right.
And you just blurted out, I'm just really busy.
We all do it.
We totally do. But did you know that linguistically speaking, you basically just told them to go away?
Oh, absolutely. It's harsh when you put it like that.
It is. So today, we are looking at why our default autopilot vocabulary is quietly destroying our social lives and, how we can actually fix it.
It's a really fascinating problem because, well, it feels so innocuous in the moment. You think you're just reporting on your current state of being, but what you're actually doing is deploying this defensive conversational reflex.
Like a shield.
Exactly. You are shutting down the interaction before it even begins.
And that brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring a concept that surfaced in an educational script from a language learning show called Catch Up English.
Yeah, featuring Sarah and Daniel.
Right. Sarah is the native speaker, and Daniel is the learner. And what caught my eye wasn't really the grammar or the vocabulary, but a massive communication roadblock that they identified.
It's a huge one.
It is. It's a psychological trap that native speakers fall into just as often as language learners, whether we are in a corporate office, a university library, or, just texting a friend.
Yeah, the underlying premise they explore is incredibly revealing because we tend to assume that poor communication happens because we don't have the right words.
Right.
But in reality, poor communication often happens because we rely on the easiest, safest words available to us. We build walls out of convenience.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the wall itself, that four-letter word, busy.
The dreaded B word.
Yes. So in the context of this English lesson, we see the learner, Daniel, and he responds to literally every social question with variations of, I'm busy, many emails. Very busy.
Yeah, and you can see the effect it has.
Oh, totally. The person he's talking to gets visibly frustrated and eventually just wants to end the conversation entirely. So it begs the question, is saying I'm busy essentially the conversational equivalent of hanging a giant do not disturb sign right on your forehead?
It absolutely is. And it operates on, two different psychological levels.
Okay.
On the surface, people use it because it requires zero cognitive load.
Like you don't have to think about it.
Exactly. You don't have to parse your complex emotions. You don't have to evaluate your audience. You just throw up the busy shield and you are protected.
Yeah.
But the secondary level is much more insidious. When you tell someone you are busy, the implicit subtext is, my time is currently more valuable than this interaction.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it is a dead end. But I wonder, though, if we sometimes use it intentionally to hide.
How do you...
Like in a high-pressure environment, right?
Yeah.
We are bombarded with demands. So maybe we aren't just lacking the vocabulary to explain our day. Maybe we are actively trying to keep people at arm's length because we are just totally overwhelmed.
What's fascinating here is that hiding works in the short term, but it triggers a massive long-term cost.
Which is?
Well, when you constantly retreat behind that word, you undergo a sort of self-dehumanization.
Why? Self-dehumanization?
Yeah. You reduce yourself to a mere metric of productivity. You're no longer a person with experiences. You are just a capacity metric that is currently full. It strips away the texture of who you are.
It flattens you out entirely. And, there's a cultural insight embedded here from the source that I think is crucial. In modern English-speaking corporate environments, and really across global corporate culture now, work is the primary theater for our social lives.
Absolutely.
It's the common denominator we share with the people we spend 8 to 12 hours a day with. If you block off the ability to talk about your work naturally, you are effectively cutting off the main artery for social bonding.
Precisely. Because you cannot build trust with someone who remains an opaque wall. If your colleagues have no access to your daily reality, they cannot form a meaningful alliance with you. So the challenge becomes, how do we dismantle that busy wall without swinging the pendulum entirely in the other direction?
Right, because nobody wants to be trapped by the water cooler listening to a 30-minute hyper-detailed monologue about a spreadsheet error.
Exactly. We've all been there.
We want to take down the do not disturb sign, but we don't want to replace it with a hostage situation.
That is a great way to put it.
And that is where we get into what we can call the golden formula for these interactions. To bypass the defensive wall effectively, you need a reliable framework. And the structure suggested is incredibly elegant. You establish a vibe, you provide a task, and you end with a plan.
It really works. because it mirrors the natural arc of a story, but compressed into about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it starts, as you mentioned, with the vibe. Before you can get into the mechanics of what you are actually doing, you have to invite the other person into the emotional atmosphere of your day.
You're setting the stage.
Yes, you have to set an emotional baseline, which cues their empathy.
Let's test that, actually, because busy is technically a vibe, right?
Well, sort of.
But it's a useless one. It's way too vague. So we need more granular categories. If we break it down, we can look at a few distinct atmospheres from the source. For instance, there is hectic.
Oh, yeah?
If I tell you my morning has been hectic, I'm not just saying I have work. I'm communicating a specific kind of chaotic energy.
Right. Hectic carries a distinct unpredictability. It's the phones ringing, multiple urgent emails landing simultaneously, people interrupting you.
Total chaos.
Yeah. And by sharing that specific vibe, you are doing the listener a massive favor. You are giving them the context for your current mood.
So they don't take it personally.
Exactly. They immediately understand that if you seem a little distracted, it's not because you are annoyed with them, it's because you are managing chaos.
It's the feeling of spinning plates. I instantly know not to ask you for a massive favor if you give me the hectic vibe.
For sure.
But there's a totally different flavor of busy, which is productive.
Oh, productive completely shifts the dynamic.
How?
Well, you are still fully occupied, but you are signaling control. You are mastering the chaos. Psychologically, this is an incredibly magnetic vibe to put out into a workspace because it is inherently positive. It invites the listener to celebrate a little bit with you.
Oh, and it practically demands a follow-up question. Like if you say, man, it's been a really productive morning, it's human nature for me to respond with, oh, nice, what did you finish?
Exactly, you've opened a door.
Now, compare that to a third vibe, which is the relentless nonstop.
Nonstop is the treadmill you cannot step off.
The worst.
It lacks the adrenaline of hectic and the satisfaction of productive. It is just a barrage of mundane, tedious tasks since 9 in the morning.
Right.
When you share this vibe, you are essentially asking for a moment of solidarity. You are looking for someone to briefly commiserate with the grind.
Which brings us to the fourth vibe. And this is where I actually have to push back a little.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've talked about variations of having too much to do. What about when you have nothing to do? The phrase suggested in the lesson is, it's been a bit slow today.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in our modern culture of performative productivity, isn't saying it's a bit slow incredibly dangerous? If I admit to my colleagues or my boss that I'm experiencing a slow day, aren't I basically waving a flag that says, I am expendable, please lay me off?
It is a deeply ingrained fear, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is exactly why people default to busy even when they aren't. We equate busyness with value and importance.
Right.
But if you look at the social dynamics of a highly functioning team, admitting that things are a bit slow is arguably one of the most powerful connection tools you have.
Okay, I'm struggling to see how exposing that vulnerability is an advantage.
Because it is a profound social signal of availability. Think about it. When everyone is running around claiming to be slammed, the person who says it's a bit slow is signaling that they actually have the mental bandwidth to engage.
Oh, I see.
You are explicitly telling the other person, I have space for you. In a high-stress environment, offering someone your undivided, unhurried attention is an act of incredible generosity. It drastically lowers their anxiety about bothering you.
Wow, that is a total paradigm shift. You aren't confessing to laziness. You are offering bandwidth. You are saying, I am a safe harbor right now if you need to talk.
Precisely.
I can totally see how that would instantly make you the most approachable person in the room. So that is the vibe. We have set the emotional stage. But a vibe floating in a vacuum isn't enough. Like, if I just look at you and say, I'm feeling productive, and then stare at you silently, we have a weird interaction.
Very weird.
Right. We have to ground it in reality, which brings us to the second part of the formula, the task.
This is the friction point where most people freeze up. And it is largely due to what psychologists call the curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge.
Yeah. You understand your job so intimately that you assume the only way to explain your day is to explain the highly technical minutia of your current project. And because you know that takes too long, you just say nothing.
Right. If I ask my friend in accounting how her day is, I am looking for a point of connection. I am absolutely not looking for a granular breakdown of the tax code discrepancies she is debugging in column D of her spreadsheet.
Exactly. The listener wants the flavor of your day, not the recipe.
Oh, I love that.
And the solution to this cognitive trap is to utilize what we can call umbrella phrases.
Okay, what are those?
These are idioms or generalized statements that capture the shape and the weight of your workload without forcing the listener to understand the actual mechanics of it.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
So using an umbrella phrase is essentially like painting with broad strokes instead of a fine brush.
Yes.
You are giving your coworker the necessary context to understand your stress without making them read the technical manual of your job. Let's look at a classic example from the source. I have a lot on my plate.
It is one of the most ubiquitous phrases in the English language. But if you pause to actually visualize it, you understand why it is so effective at transferring empathy.
Let's visualize it.
Imagine a literal plate at a buffet dinner, and you have piled it so high with steaks, salads, and sides that it is structurally compromised.
Like you can't even move the plate without something spilling over the edge.
Yes, that visceral image perfectly encapsulates the emotional reality of your day. When you tell a colleague, I have a lot on my plate right now, you are instantly communicating the precariousness of your situation.
You don't need to list everything.
Exactly. You don't need to list the specific emails or the reports or the client calls, the steaks and salads of your job, so to speak. The listener already intuitively grasps the heavy balancing act you're performing.
It's a shortcut to empathy.
It really is.
Another fantastic umbrella phrase is for when your schedule is entirely monopolized, back-to-back meetings.
Oh, yeah. What makes back-to-back so descriptive is that it conveys a structural reality rather than a content reality. It literally means one obligation ends and the next begins simultaneously.
There is zero negative space.
Right. There is no time to process, to transition, or even to grab a glass of water.
It implies a lack of oxygen in your schedule. And again, notice the broad strokes here. You are not saying, I had a strategy sync at 9, a client pitch at 10, and a budget review at 11.
Nobody wants to hear all that.
No, you are just establishing the architecture of your day. And this isn't just a corporate trick, right? If you are a student, the exact same principle applies. You don't need to explain the nuances of your thesis on medieval agriculture. You just say, I'm studying for finals, or I'm prepping for a major presentation.
The function remains identical across any context. You are providing a concrete, universally understood task that justifies the vibe you just set.
Okay, I see.
If your vibe was hectic, the task of prepping for a major presentation perfectly rationalizes that chaos. It grounds your emotional state in a physical reality the listener can easily grasp.
Okay, so we have the vibe and we have the task. We have opened the door and invited the person into our reality. But if we stop right there, we run into a completely new problem.
A big one.
Right?
Yes.
If I say, it's been nonstop today, I have back-to-back meetings, and then I just sigh and stop talking. I haven't really connected with you. I've basically just trauma dumped on you.
You have left a heavy, unresolved cloud over the interaction.
Yeah.
If you end the conversation on the task, it reads as a complaint. The other person feels burdened by your stress, and suddenly they feel the need to solve your problem or aggressively comfort you.
Which is super awkward for a casual encounter.
Highly awkward. You need a release valve for that conversational tension.
Which brings us to the crucial final step of the golden formula. The plan, or the forward-facing pivot. The phrase that does the heavy lifting here is simply looking forward to.
Looking forward to is an incredibly powerful linguistic pivot. It actively pulls the energy of the conversation out of the stressful, muddy present and points it toward an optimistic, manageable future. It provides resolution.
And what I love about the script examples is that the plan doesn't have to be some grand, profound vacation. You could be looking forward to your lunch break in 20 minutes. You could be looking forward to the weekend. You could literally just be looking forward to going home and experiencing some peace and quiet.
Well, peace and quiet is a universally understood human desire. By ending the formula with something you were anticipating, you achieve two very important social functions.
Which are?
First, you reassure the listener that you are okay, you are managing your stress, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
Second, you give them the easiest possible hook to respond to. They don't have to navigate your stress. They can just agree with your hope. They can say, oh man, me too. I cannot wait for this weekend.
You've successfully navigated them through your reality and landed on common ground. Let's actually look at how seamlessly this vibe, task, plan, structure flows when you put it all together. Imagine an office scenario.
Okay.
It's been pretty nonstop today. I've got a lot on my plate with the new quarterly budget, but I'm really looking forward to the team dinner tonight.
It is remarkably efficient. In less than 10 seconds, you have shared a nuanced emotional state, you have provided a generalized but concrete reason for that state, and you have ended on a collaborative, positive note that invites further interaction.
It completely dismantles the busy wall. Or take a university scenario from the lesson. Things are pretty hectic right now. I'm preparing for my final exams next week, but I'm still looking forward to the summer break.
It flows perfectly.
It really does. You aren't a robot anymore. You are a human being navigating a challenge and looking toward a reward.
It transforms what would have been a conversational dead end into a rich, structured, and entirely appropriate exchange. But it is worth exploring a fascinating pitfall here.
Oh, the danger zone.
Yes. When we try to express this dynamic of navigating hard work, there is a specific danger zone people wander into, particularly when they translate idioms from other cultures into English workplace environments.
Yes, this is a brilliant observation. Often, when international students or even just highly competitive people want to express that they are working incredibly hard under a heavy burden, they will use a phrase like, I am fighting.
Right. And if you look at it linguistically, you can trace exactly how they arrive at that phrasing. In many languages and cultures, the idioms for pushing through a difficult, high-friction task translate literally to doing battle or fighting.
It's a badge of honor.
Yes, it is intended to be a display of intense effort and dedication to the job.
But if you walk into an American or British office, grab a coffee, let out an exhausted sigh, and tell your coworker, I am fighting, they're going to be incredibly alarmed.
Very alarmed.
Right. People might literally wonder if you are in a physical altercation in the parking lot, or at the very least, they will assume you are fiercely angry at someone on your team. It sounds violently aggressive to the native ear.
The appropriate cultural equivalent in English is the phrase, I'm hanging in there, which signals that things are difficult, the pressure is high, but I am surviving.
But let's pause and really look at that imagery, because it's slightly bizarre.
How so?
Hanging in there. Like, the visual is essentially someone dangling by their fingertips from the ledge of a cliff.
Yeah.
Or like a cat clinging to a tree branch.
Yeah, the classic poster.
Right. Why on earth is the visual of desperately dangling from a precipice seen as more positive and socially acceptable in our workplace culture than the visual of actively fighting back and taking charge?
If we connect this to the broader picture of the Western workplace, it reveals a deeply ingrained cultural value regarding how we expect professionals to handle stress.
Okay, tell me more.
Fighting implies volatility. It implies conflict, lashing out, and pushing outward against your environment. In a corporate ecosystem, fighting creates collateral damage. It makes people nervous because it suggests you might be a liability.
Like you are a loose cannon.
Exactly. But hanging in there implies stoicism and endurance. It implies resilience. You are absorbing the immense weight of the pressure, but you are holding your position.
So you aren't a threat to anyone else.
Right. You aren't attacking anyone else. You are quietly enduring the storm. In group dynamics, a teammate who can quietly endure pressure without creating secondary conflicts is valued much more highly than someone who combatively struggles against it.
That makes perfect sense. We want to know that our coworkers are tough enough to handle a crisis without turning around and biting us.
Exactly.
Hanging in there says, I am under severe duress, but I am stable. And the way we respond to that is totally different too. If someone is hanging in there, you don't tell them to keep fighting. You offer endurance-based encouragement. You say, you've got this, or keep it up.
It shifts the entire psychological framing from a battlefield to a marathon. In a battle, there are casualties. In a marathon, you are just managing your own internal endurance.
Right.
By cheering on their endurance rather than their aggression, you're reinforcing a safe, supportive connection. It is a subtle semantic shift, but it radically alters how safe people feel approaching you.
It really highlights how the hyper-specific language we choose literally builds the reality of our relationships.
It truly does.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this deep dive home. We started out looking at the mechanics of English workplace interactions from Catch-Up English. But what we actually uncovered was a mirror reflecting our own psychological defenses.
Yeah.
We realized that defaulting to the word busy isn't just a lazy habit. It is actively destructive to our social fabric. It is a wall that isolates us.
And the antidote to that isolation is intentional structure. By utilizing the vibe, task, plan framework, you instantly upgrade your emotional intelligence in these interactions.
It's a game changer.
It is. You invite people into your atmosphere, you give them a relatable concept to grasp your burden, and you guide the exchange toward hope. You stop being a capacity metric, and you start being a person again.
Because communication should always be about opening doors, not building walls.
Well said.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to mull over today. We've spent this entire deep dive dissecting how the word busy secretly acts as a conversational dead end, quietly shutting down the relationships around us.
Right.
But it makes you wonder, what other autopilot default filler words are we deploying as shields every single day?
Well, that's a good question.
Right. Think about when someone asks how you're doing, and you just reflexively say fine. Or when someone asks how you are feeling, and you just default to tired.
We hear those all the time.
Constantly. Are those words acting as walls too? Fine is the ultimate defensive perimeter, and tired is the ultimate physical barrier. Are we using these words to hide in plain sight?
It's definitely possible.
And in the process, are we quietly isolating ourselves from the very people who are just trying to connect with us? It is something to deeply consider the next time your brain tries to fire off an autopilot response. Pay attention to the walls you might be building without even realizing it. We will see you on the next deep dive.